to our YJP NextGen second event. It's so great to see so many of you. We've got an amazing turnout. Our previous event, our launch event, was such a big success, so it's great to see the momentum still rolling. Before we begin, I'm going to hand over to Yisrael to say a blessing for Israel.
Hey all, obviously we all, we've got a lot of people here tonight. We're still missing a lot of brothers and sisters who have gone to fight for us and also who unfortunately are in captivity. So we pray for all of them. Shir Amalis Esa'anai, V'ayin Yavo Ezri Mi'im Adonai, Oiseh Shamayim V'aretz, Al Yitein Lamot Raglecha, Al Yanum Shomrecha. Hine Le'yanum V'lo Yishan, Shomei Yisrael, Adonai Shomrecha, Adonai Silcha, Al Yad Yeminecha, Yomam HaShemesh V'yakecha, V'yareach Balayla, Adonai Yishmarcha Mikara, Yishmar Es Nafshecha, Adonai Yishmar Seischa V'yecha, Me'ata V'yad Elam. May we only hear good news.
Thank you so much. We'd first like to thank Wingate for having us in this awesome space. It's so amazing. We've got an amazing panel here. We're very lucky to hear from these two. Basically, we're angling this for advice, for inspiration, for people who are starting out their commercial careers. So I think I'll hand over to Ben to get started, and there'll be time for questions at the end. Thank you.
Good job, Ali. Hi everyone, thanks for coming out. Thanks, Ali, for the introductions. Tonight we've got two great speakers beside me. First we've got Joel Rosen. I won't go too much into detail, that's for them to do. But Joel Rosen is an Executive Director at Wingate. We've also got Zach Braun, who's an Associate Director. Started his career actually from an analyst position, but he'll be telling you about that. But both can give different sort of aspects to what it's like working in a large firm like Wingate. So without further ado, I'd like both Joel and Zach to introduce themselves and tell us what you do. So Joel, we'll start with you.
Give the microphone a little bit of a go, but if it does get a bit distorted, please someone just put their hands up, because one beautiful thing about this space is that it is amazing for these events, but sometimes the acoustics can come back to bite us, so just someone, don't be shy to just put your hand up and let me know. And saying that, firstly, welcome to everybody. I'm Joel Rosen, as you heard from Ben, the head of the private capital team at Wingate. I've got the fortunate job of looking after all the Wingate investors, so I'm sure you guys will have some nice questions for me, but that means I have the pleasure, and sometimes displeasure, as you guys will hear, but mostly the pleasure of dealing with an excess of 3,000 investors that we have on our books, as well as 12 staff across the country that report into my team. And I just thought it would be a good time to let you guys know what's happening in the private credit market, as well as what Wingate does, and especially at this critical juncture where you guys are in your careers. I know that normally we have these type of events, and it's normally, as I was saying to Ben earlier, a bit of an older crowd that we speak to, so I really appreciate that we've got the up-and-coming next generation here, and look forward to the events on that type of basis.
I'm Zach Braun. I'm an Associate Director in Wingate Property in the origination team, so that means my job is really sourcing new transactions for us to invest in and managing a lot of our developer-partner relationships. That means finding new developers, sitting down with existing large-scale developers in Melbourne, Sydney. We're a national business, so we do a lot of stuff online as well. Sourcing mostly construction loans, so we'll be lending to developers who are looking to build high-rise towers, whether it's residential, commercial, hotels, anything in between.
Perfect, thanks Joel, thanks Zach. Before we get into the serious questions, we'd like to start off with a bit of a quirky one. As you all know, starting your career, it never goes in one straight line. Both Joel and Zach are in great positions, but often we start somewhere and we end up in a very different place. So I'd actually like to know, if you weren't in this current role or in the finance industry, where would you be and why aren't you there now? Start with Joel.
That's actually quite an interesting one. So, believe it or not, I actually wanted to be a paramedic. I sometimes feel like I'm actually saving a lot of people's lives on a daily basis, so maybe there is a bit of a crossover on that type of basis, but I actually was seriously considering going that route. as I say, is that I think because I'm a people person, I like being out there dealing with people. There was, sort of that passion to see where you can help, and it was something that I was actually about to do. But then for some reason, there was that other side of me that said, you know what, you can also be out there dealing with people and in a, sort of, how can I put this nicely, more lucrative career path, and that's how the basis. So that's how I ended up more on the finance part.
Zach, did you also want to be a paramedic, or would you want to be?
I wanted to be a rock and roller so badly. I was not good enough for air guitar. I I was always half decent with numbers through school and uni, and I finished uni. I didn't start at Wingate, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I put some property and some numbers together and fell into this place by chance. But if I wasn't doing that, I would have liked to play guitar.
Very nice. I did happen to stumble upon your LinkedIn profile, and I saw a bit about creating music. Do you still do that, or are you focused on finance for now?
I was very quiet for the last 2 years, except I think I got the bug again. I've started again the last couple of weeks, which has been nice.
We do have microphones, but I won't get you to voice. Very nice, very nice. So you both land up in the current roles you're in, which is great. We're happy for that. We'd also, I'm sure all of you would like to know a bit more about Wingate. It's a lovely office, we do know that, with a great view, even better during the day. Now, this young Jewish professionals, there's an emphasis on the J for Jewish. I understand that Wingate has a bit of a Jewish history. Joel, can you tell us a bit about that history and where Judaism comes in?
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure is Lane here. I asked him to actually hold up a book, because some people don't believe me when I tell them this. But Wingate's actually, there we go. See, there's a book. And actually, we leave that book in our reception area. And as you'll see, the title is called Ward Wingate, and it's actually the story of Ward Wingate. For those that don't know, Wingate was named after him. He was a famous army officer during the World War II, and actually was one of the few people that Churchill actually commended and said would have been one of the next leaders had he not been killed in battle. But where I think it's very interesting from a Jewish perspective is that some of the tactics that he used in warfare, it's actually called Chindit, and interestingly, if you look at the room over there, it's called the Chindit room. Those tactics are used by the IDF still today, because he was a very, very strong Christian Zionist and a very good friend of the Jewish people. So what you'll find is often in Israel, and I think there's even a road here called Wingate, and that's based off Ward Wingate. And that was a great name when his father Farrell started out Wingate as the founder, because if you look at the tactics and these type of things that were employed in battle, we try to be strategic out there, not to say that we're in a war, but in saying that, there is a lot of things that you can learn from a book like that when you start in your career does lend itself well. Another great sort of catalyst of that, as I was alluding to, is Winston Churchill. And I know not to bore you guys with history, but just as a bit of a tip, some of the tactics and strategies that he employed as well are great business fundamentals that a lot of people utilize to this day. So with that sort of ethos, we try to bring that through into the Wingate culture. And again, not to say that we're in a battle, but we see ourselves more from the teamwork, being strategic in terms of how we look at investments, in terms of how we deal with investors, as well as from a day-to-day staff perspective as well. Something that's very important to us.
I'd probably just add to that we've grown to such a large corporate business, but at its core, we are a Jewish business. I mean, from our founder, Farrell, early days, we're talking, Jewish family investors, Jewish employees. We're a large multicultural organization now. We still have a lot of Jewish roots.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks, Zach. I have a question for Zach now. A lot of people here want to maybe start off in perhaps a Jewish organisation or any organisation. They want to start climbing the ranks. Now, Zach did start his career as an analyst at Wingate. Can you tell the audience a bit about that journey, developing from analyst to now associate director in the same organisation?
The best piece of advice I got when I started was enthusiasm. That's the number one thing people look for. If you're enthusiastic about what you're doing, if someone hands you a piece of work and you're enthusiastic about doing it, no matter how boring, no matter how administrative, and you put your hand up for more and more things. You're a pleasure to work with, a pleasure to be around. People want to continue to help with your development. And if you're surrounded by a good culture, if you put your hand up for things and people enjoy being around you, then you're going to get more and more opportunity. You're going to get more opportunity to prove yourself, and you're going to work hard. And that's really how you're going to excel.
Very nice, thanks. On the topic of people getting their careers started, I think a lot of people in the commercial world have heard about the buzzwords like banking, consulting, Big Four. Private credit is a bit more niche, but it's a booming industry, I hear. Joel, you recently hosted or talked at an event about demystifying private credit. Could you please talk a bit more about what exactly private credit is?
Yeah, sure, Ben. So, what's quite interesting is that private credit's not a new thing. It was really evolved from what happened post the global financial crisis. As you can hear by the accent, I did a lot of these, sort of private credit gigs, if I can call it that, offshore. And the reality is post the global financial crisis in the US and Europe predominantly, there was a big need for a non-bank lender. Because the banks were under a lot of legislation and pressure post what actually happened in the global financial crisis, was that a lot of smart investors realized that there could be a smarter way to do banking, for lack of a better description, in a marketplace that was under a lot of pressure. And so what you saw is that a lot of these big private credit houses started evolving out of the US and Europe. What happened here is what is quite interesting is that Australia lagged a little bit in that there was only a Royal Banking Commission in about 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And what happened during that crisis was that people realized that the banks were going to be heavily legislated, and that there was also going to be this need for this sort of private credit explosion. It wasn't to say that it wasn't in place at the time. There was a lot of people doing private credit, but what it meant is that it suddenly became the flavor of the month. And what you'll see is happen internationally, and why it's a great, potential career path for people, is that banking no longer is, the sort of investment bankers or the extra form of investment bankers that we are. It no longer has that sort of passion and flavor we used to have in the early days because of this legislation that's in place. And I'm not saying that the legislation is bad, but what it means is that there's a new opportunity for ex-bankers that can be in a more entrepreneurial space, have the same measures of transparency, the same measures of investment analysis and risk, and still give investors return on that type of basis. And that's what you see in this whole private credit explosion. So to answer your question, what actually is it? It's the same as what the banks do. I alluded to the fact that I look after the private capital team. That is all of the investors when the money comes into the business. Zach's team on the origination side lends out the money, goes back through that cycle and comes in and out. And that's really what private credit is. I like to say that it's something very sophisticated and detailed. We tell people it is, but the truth is that it's just another form of banking. And because of what you're seeing in terms of what I've said, in terms of where the economy is, where the world is, you're able to offer clients a sort of bespoke type of servicing that they were used to in sort of the early days of investment banking, but at a bit more of a privatized and an entrepreneurial type of basis.
Thanks, Joel. I'm sure everyone now fully understands private credit. On the sort of, we'll be testing going around. Joel will be asking you questions to see if you were listening. But on the sort of topic of that analysis that you do, you did mention talking to clients as well. I'm going to jump over to Zach. Again, you started your career as an analyst. I'm sure people in the crowd want to get straight to talking to clients, straight to the schmoozing, but you probably got to start off with the grunt work. Can you tell us a bit about how your role did change as you developed and how you would recommend people prepare or develop over that process?
Well, I think you have to know your skill set, first of all. If you're not someone that's confident talking to new people in new situations or is not there yet, then you certainly won't be ready. But I go back to the other point of enthusiasm, you get even work hard. Just work really hard. If you want to go somewhere, you've got to work hard. No one's going to give things to you. So just keep pushing yourself to get more work, do it to a high standard, do it enthusiastically, and eventually people will build trust with you, right? You want to be able to build trust so that you can get in front of new people, get in front of clients, and you can only get in front of clients once you've built trust.
Thanks, Zach. My next question is for both of you. Now, you two have something, probably have a lot in common actually, but something else that you have in common besides working for Wingate is you both actually went back to university, I saw. So Joel, you did an MBA in South Africa, and Zach, you did a Master's in Property. Can you both talk a bit about that decision to go back to university, and if, would you recommend it, if so, why?
Yeah, it's another quite difficult question, but there, isn't it? I was sort of at a point in my career where I was looking for something I felt that was missing. Just to give you guys a little bit of the context, I had done all the fancy undergraduate degrees and honors in investment and corporate finance, and had already had quite an established career in investment banking. But I felt like there was something else that was missing. And I think a lot of us get to that point in our lives. I've already been working for, I guess, at that stage about 10 years. And I just felt, because I needed something, I wanted to do something that would hopefully actually make a difference. There was a lot of options out there at that stage. Obviously, the CFA was an option, as well as an executive MBA, because I'd already been working. The reason I went to an executive MBA was because I wanted something that had all the international rankings, but that was something a bit more generalized and a bit more focused on entrepreneurship. So I just felt that I wasn't going to be staying just in a traditional investment banking type of space, and post that I wanted to build something myself. And because the MBA is a bit more aligned to this entrepreneurial thinking, it was definitely something that seemed a good fit at the time. In saying that, it actually helped me in that through the whole process, I managed to actually get in some private equity funders and started a business post doing my MBA. Built up quite a large size property fund, which I was very fortunate with, and actually sold that out to a REIT in 2018. So it was very useful actually going through that. And I think the beauty of it was, because I'm assuming your next question was going to be what did I actually learn from it. I wouldn't say as much as because I had a strong fundamental or fundamentals when I started it out. I think really the multitasking and networking was really the key things that I picked up from that. So I would just recommend that if anyone is considering furthering their education while doing this part-time at night or whatever it might be, just ensure that you're doing it for the right reasons and that it's something that you feel will enhance your career. And I know it sounds obvious, but there is, and everyone's welcome to chat to me afterwards, some smart ways of thinking about that and how you can actually do that.
Zach, how about you?
We're overqualified for what we do. I did my Master's in Property because I had no idea what I wanted to do at all. Before I started at Wingate, I was finishing my undergrad. I went to work for my uncle. He's got a logistics business, and I bounced around in a couple of different roles in that business. The last year I spent there was at a software company they had, which was housed in one of the warehouses with no windows. And the crew that were working there were very much rock up 9:30, leaving exactly on 5. A lot of great people trying to do great things. I was just like, it's not a spot for me, so I left and I was like, what the hell do I do? But I knew property might be something I'm interested in, and I went and did the Masters of Property at RMIT. And the main thing it taught me, one, my first subject was property development and building systems, and it taught me what the hell property is. Every other subject didn't really matter. And the rest taught me what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be a valuer, I didn't want to be in other parts of the property industry. I wanted to put together my background in finance and doing some numbers, and my interest in property, and I wanted to go to what was a smaller house back then in a place like Wingate rather than going to a much bigger organisation at the time.
Very nice, thanks Zach. One theme I'd like to pick up on that Joel mentioned, you sort of compared the idea about going to university for the fundamentals versus the connections. Now, YJP NextGen is all about building a community, networking within the Jewish community in particular. Can you talk to us a bit about if you had access to a community like YJP NextGen, how would you use it and what advice you'd give to people networking here tonight?
That's actually quite a fortuitous question you're asking me, because I actually published an article in about 2015 on how entrepreneurs can use networking to enhance their businesses. Was fortunate that I was actually, you can look at my LinkedIn profile, it was something that managed to actually get in an academic journal, which is another whole long story and I don't recommend it. But anyway, be it as it may, what it actually showed me in the process was the power of networking. And the reality is that the biggest challenge you find in academic research, and why I'm telling you this is not to blow smoke that there was an article published, but really that there's such a lack of academic research in the power of networking. And just by doing a little bit of research and touching on that, I was able to get something published because it is so powerful. And if you can use those networks with events like this YJP, it's something that can snowball. And you can meet someone here that you just randomly had a chat to, that's someone that you weren't going to connect with in any other manner, shape or form, and that can lead to something amazing. And basically what we were able to show through that was that there was a number of unbelievable businesses and opportunities that were founded through these type of events and networks. And yeah, it's something super powerful. So if you guys, again, I'm here afterwards, if you want to chat about the power of networking, let me know. Do it on a daily basis, it's what I'm paid to do. But be it as it may, it is something that you guys are really fortunate to have these type of organizations that push for these type of events, because it is really something super powerful, and even more so to have a turnout like this. I think that's something incredible, because often I go to a lot of these type of events, and the challenge you have is especially if it's in the city and it's at this time and it's a whole long story and you can't get you. It's great to see so many of you here. So utilize these type of platforms, because you just never know where it leads to.
Zach?
Completely agree. Excuse me. When you come to something like this, as you said, it's a fantastic turnout. You're all here for a reason. Just ask yourself the question, why am I here? And find that answer. And find one person that you want to speak to in terms of getting their details, going for coffee. A lot of what this network can do is paying it forward. There's so many people that I went for coffee with before I started my job here. There's a number of people that have maybe finished their degrees, started their career in a law firm. There's a lot of people here that haven't finished their degree yet. There's always someone in front of you where you want to be in your career that are in this room right now. Get their details, go for coffee. I'll give my details to YJP, and they can, if you want to reach out and grab them, we can go for coffee as well. But just keep speaking to everyone. You never know what's going to be behind the next door.
There you go. That's quite motivating, actually. You might be standing next to your next business partner or colleague. Those are great words. And on the topic of networking, we want you to spend most of the night networking. So we will get to that shortly, but I am going to open up to the crowd. I know people don't love to ask questions in these moments, but I'm going to have the awkward few moments of silence. Does anyone in the crowd have any questions they'd like to ask Zach or Joel while they're sitting up here?
Zach, how do you get your hair looking like that?
I use a coconut-based oil once a day, and I rarely wash it.
I'll keep that in mind.
Guys, any questions? Someone? Gotta be some.
Ben, how in the property world, the last year or the last few years from COVID to Trump's and tariffs and everything in between, how do you speak to investors on trying to sell your product, and it's something you absolutely believe in, but the rest of the world and the rest of the economy is sort of throwing all of these different things at you?
I think the easy answer to that question is the same reason why private credit has exploded across the country over the last 10 years. It's because they're fixed rate loans, they're not subject to swings in the market, right? You've seen big swings in the share market because of tariffs and things like that. You've seen crashes in the office market over the last 2 years. But the stability of the returns of the kind of investment product we've made have actually supported the business's growth.
Anyone else?
With the macroeconomic situation at the moment, have you found it harder on the investment, selling to investors and attaining more capital? How have you guys gone about that and dealt with that? Have you changed your strategy?
It's a good question. I'm not sure if everyone heard that. It was just around the tough economy at the moment and how has that impacted raising capital from investors. What we're actually finding is that private capital is a very interesting space in that should be counter-cyclical in that it works in both markets. That's always been the good selling points about it, because what happens is that, of course, we all want to be in a bull market, but if you're in a bear market like we are at the moment, is you just change your risk profile in terms of where you're lending to, and what will happen is where you're focusing on the capital stack. So without going into too much detail, just it would mean that debt products are obviously less riskier, And because the banks aren't doing much, you can focus more on the debt space, which has more security. In a bull market, you would be focusing more on the equity side. So to answer your question, provided that you're following that investment thesis, you should have a compelling proposition to offer investors in this marketplace. Because if you look what's happening, as we've just spoken about internationally with a lot of this turmoil and what you've seen happen in the equities markets, private credit is a good alternative to that. And so it's a good proposition to bring in new investors. In saying that, people are nervous, and so you have to do a lot of counseling on that basis. So like this conversation I'm having here, I do a lot of these presentations to family offices, sophisticated investors, the wealth channels, these type of things, because not a lot of people realize how that works in these tougher environments. So it's definitely a challenge, but if you're able to get the message out there, it's also a good selling opportunity. In saying that, we also been really fortunate in that we've been recently acquired, and you guys would have seen it in the press, by a large Singaporean property equity player that has Singaporean sovereign wealth fund backing. So what that means is that from a balance sheet and liquidity perspective, we've got really a big, strong big brother. So when you can go to potential investors, because there's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace, they want to know that if things go bad, who is going to be underwriting your balance sheet and liquidity. If you've got that type of funding behind you, it's a good proposition. So it's definitely challenging, but if you can get those messages out there, it's also a good selling point.
Thank you. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for Zach, Braun, and Joel Rosen for speaking. Hope you guys have got some wisdom out of it. So a round of applause.